So say we have somebody that wants to open a brewery. So if somebody like that, they're like, yes, I love beer. I love making beer. It's like my passion and I know how to scale. And so now I've got a space, but I want to figure out like, who am I supposed to sell this to? Doesn't everybody like beer? Everyone I know likes beer. So how do they figure out how to isolate their market?
I go through this with a lot of clients when I ask them who's your target customer. And the worst answer that you could get or that you could provide is everyone. That's not an answer. Just because everyone may drink beer or like ice cream or like steak or whatever it is you're selling, doesn't mean you're always going to get them all through the door. When I have clients say, everyone's my customer, I said, well, let's dial that back a little bit and think about it. Because I've had that a couple of times, in the last month. And, once we start to go down the path of examining, really who their ideal demographic is, they start to get it. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, everyone will eat ice cream, but maybe that's not who I'm going after. So it applies to everything. And then I think it's important to examine what it is your business is doing. Are you selling a product or a service?
Yes.
Because, it depends on what you're doing.
That's a huge piece of it. One of the things that we had talked about offline earlier today was IPA, income producing activity. And I think about that. If I'm in a position and I'm talking about, or we're discussing a topic where I'm like, I'm not sure the exact track to go, it's always easy in business to go back to the money. Right. So if we go back, like, think about how much money it's going to cost you to get different people to come in and buy your product. And so it's like the cost of the investment of like marketing. If who is going to walk by, if you have like a physical storefront, or who's going to click on your website, see it and be like, yes, that's it. Oh, I can't believe I'm here. And so you start to get a picture of that. And for a lot of people, I think that we start businesses or we think about businesses that kind of serve ourselves and that we're inspired and motivated by. So like, if you're at a complete loss for like, who do I sell to? Like, well, look in the mirror. Do you consume and love and appreciate your product? It's unlikely that you're going to be not congruent. Like you're going to fall into it somewhere, but it's a place to start. So for somebody with a brewery, if you're thinking about like where they would go, I the part of it goes to like what you were saying, like what is it that you're actually producing? Because not all breweries are created equal. And so if I had one that was like a micro brewery that had a really strong, I don't even know beers well enough to have them to
I don't either.
But it's like a real hoppy taste, or it's like you make a really good series of IPAs. That's gonna be a different group of people than show up to like your local hole in the wall bar downtown.
Yeah. Well, that's about knowing your customer, and you mentioned earlier, starting a business of or patronizing what you like. Most business owners start something that they're passionate about, and you have to be passionate about what you're doing. I believe, because you want to make it something that's enjoyable. At the end of the day, you have to make money, but if you have a passion for it, it's going to be great. But knowing who your customer is critical, because it's gonna drive so much of what you need to do on a daily basis. Give you an example, and I'll preface this by saying that a lot of the times when I talk to people and we're getting on the topic of marketing and finding these customers, there's a huge emotion and psychology component to it. And I find a lot of business owners focus on the product or the service. Well, I make the best ice cream, I make the best beer, I do that. That's great, and I hope you do. Right. But you have to go down the road of the emotional road, and also the psychology of it, and think about your customer and how are you going to get them to ring your cash register. I have a client, a brand new client that's in the baking industry. Obviously, for what we do here, it's confidential. We can't, of course, give too much information. But this client, started a business out of a passion of baking, and is doing a great job at it. And he's at a point where he realized he needs to increase his sales by X amount in order to get to the next threshold. So we discussed strategies on how to do that. And I asked him, well, who's buying your product now? And he knew. He told me, well, it's females between 30 and 45, or
Right.
whatever it was. Great. So who's buying your product. Let's think about, from a marketing strategy, how can we capture this demographic and demographics that are attached to your primary? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, most of the people who are buying his product do so for gifts. They do so for themselves. It's for an occasion. What he does is lends itself very much to that as a gift. So I said, well, why don't you pull out a calendar, January through December, write down every holiday, everything that goes on throughout the year that may lend itself to your product and selling it. And now let's think about the emotion of it, okay? And I use Mother's Day as the prime example all the time. And the reason I did that was because, okay, your demographic is women, but your demographic is also people like me, who on Mother's Day have no idea what to get, don't know what to buy, are waiting till the last minute. You do the cliche flowers or box of chocolates. What about what you offer that's so... You already know that women love it, but go after me. Make my job easier. You have to... If you can lead your customer to the sale, because a lot of people don't know. You and I, we don't know what we need sometimes. But if you can take the work out of it, and through effective social media ads or whatnot, and you target males in the same demographic, watch and see what happens, and do it around Mother's Day. Hey, are you tired of the same old flowers and chocolates? I guarantee your wife is too. Yeah. How about this from us? Place the order here. I'm there all day long. You just took the work out of it. It's something unique. It's something that they're not going to expect. I already know that demographic likes it. Home run. The light bulb went off. It's like, oh my God, that's brilliant. So, well, it's really not. It's just you're now getting into the psychology of who your customer is and who is related to these customers. And you can do that with just about anything.
It's true. Yeah, no, it's spot on. It's and I experience this. I get targeted ads around particular times of the year where I know the company does it. Like there's a chocolate covered berries company that does that. And so every Mother's Day, and they think it out too. Yeah. Like they know you're going to wait till the last minute. Like it's like, that's like what we do. It's like, oh, it's the day before Mother's Day. Oh, I didn't make that purchase.
They know their customer.
They know. Yeah. And so it's not just one, it's that goes into like the like you were talking about, the psychology and the psychographics of it. But then it's so important what you said, because I mean, we're talking about customer segments, right? So we have different segments of people that buy from us, and the dads and the husbands are a segment. The moms are another segment. The moms that are getting that have kids for parties, that's like an adjacent sub segment kind of that, something like that. And and being able to effectively target that. I mean, you could look at even time of the day, like when are people most, if you already have the data, like when are they making the purchases?
Right.
Like maybe I can shift our hours of operation even and look at saving money on this. And like, I don't need to be open for like these 4 hours in the morning because it's always on the way home from school or whatever the case may be. That's understanding your target demographic. And that's the difference. I think it can make such a huge difference in your business when you spend the time to actually figure that out on the front end. Otherwise you're doing what you said, then you're trying to sell to everybody. And the problem with that is that, I'd said that it's going to cost a different amount. It might cost $11 in marketing to get me in the door for, whatever, some like cooking products versus somebody who does who appreciates cooking on their own. It's like their passion and they love it. And they're like looking, like you said, you want to lead the people that are already there. They're like, I'm looking for a place to plug in. Like, let me spend my money somewhere. And so if you don't show them if you don't know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I actually talk with people about doing with social media.
Mm-hmm.
Is finding places. If you're going to start establishing yourself as a brand and associated with an idea or a purpose or your product or your services, you want to find where those people already are.
Yeah.
Like, where are they gathering? And then you can use those places to not even promote yourself, but to start asking questions and just listen. And show up, like, what are people complaining about? What problems do they have?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that helps to answer your product question. Oh, I didn't even think about selling lemonade, at my cafe. It was always coffee and muffins. But you don't know unless you start asking people.
Right.
I wonder if somebody already has a business, right? They're already up and running, and they have a fairly regular amount of customers coming in. Again, I think of like a restaurant, people coming in. How do you have any ideas about how you could start gathering data? Because I think about like going into a restaurant, right? I just go in there, I order, I eat, and I leave. Like, are you just like putting like a spotter out there? It's like, hey, like we got 25 to 35-year-olds like over there, and
Right.
Or like, what are your ideas about collecting that kind of data?
Well, data is everything nowadays. It's not like, when I grew up, we didn't have, everything we have now with as far as access to data, and data is an asset to a business. You better know who your customers are. If you're in retail, a lot of the POS systems have functionality built in to capture that data so that you can use it for marketing, that you can generate lists, that oh, Matt comes here 3 times a week. Okay, well, we want to make sure Matt continues to come 3 times a week. If not, how do we get him to 7? So data is critical. If you're running a retail operation and you have the ability to add, that to your POS, if you're not already, I would encourage you to do that. Similar to data with social media. If you're going to run social media ads, you want to look at the analytics of that. You want to know what's performing and what's not. And the beauty of that is that, if you're going to run an ad on Facebook, you can monitor it while it's running. And if it's not performing, you can push the pause button and then recalibrate. So I know some clients who will run, 2 or 3 ads concurrently to see which one is actually gaining traction. And whichever one's gaining traction, they'll pause the other 2 and then, double or triple down on that one.
I think it's people can get lost in that they think that, like they have 3 different ads running at the same time, and like, no. It's not as crazy. It's not like they have 3 independent sales or offerings going on. It's one sale. It's one offering, and they're packaging it differently. Like, when I change the copy and I change the wording from this to this, if I say early bird access versus discount versus loyalty perk, like, what happens?
You can experiment with all those variables and see what's working.
Images.
Yeah, absolutely. And with social media, it's again, dating myself, but it's not like when I grew up where you're going to run an ad, you pay for the ad, you get it designed, you send it out, and now you sit there and hope who's reading the newspaper, who's going to see it.
Right.
Now, everyone's on their phones. They have been. That's if you're not trying to reach customers there, you're doing your business a disservice. No matter what it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's retail, store, brick and mortar, or an online presence. You have to be going where your customers are, and we're all there right now.
Yeah,
have been.
Especially with COVID. On the back when we all got pushed back into our homes and everyone's operating from remote. Like, we're going back to the workplace now, but we got very I couldn't even imagine a world like in 2020 where like we're gonna be more dependent online. I was like, in my head, I'm like, we're an online nation. We're an online society. Like, Amazon is everywhere. Never.
Well, think about that from all right. So you have an unprecedented historical event in the pandemic that shifted the entire landscape of business and commerce and everything that we know. It was a seismic change. The companies that recognized that and jumped on it did very well, not only in the moment, but in building their brand. There are some companies that capitalized and maybe knew that that was their moment to shine. And the example I'll use is Peloton. Peloton crushed it, but they fell off a cliff after the pandemic, because people wanted to get out more.
Oh my gosh. Sarah, can you look up, just Google Zoom and look for like new articles that were published within the last week. So Zoom, to back up your point, that like they were skyrocketing. They were like the number one as the pandemic went out, and we're like, okay, we actually have to work from this. It's not 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, well, Zoom is the standard. It's so awesome for them that happened.
Yeah.
But it's like you knew that once we went back, you're gonna fall off a cliff. And then now there was a recent article that came out that talked about. There was one, I think, a couple of months ago that showed like their how they fell off, their price or their value like cratered as you would expect. But then now I think they just came out with an article within the last couple of days that showed that they're bringing their people back into work to work in person, which is perfectly ironic for Zoom.
Exactly.
They're like, all that Zoom stuff that you got to come in, you got to come in and work.
Yeah. So some of the headlines are, even Zoom wants employees back in the office, and then it says Zoom's terms of service change sparks worries over AI usage.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a whole lot going on now.
Oh my gosh.
There's a whole lot going on now. We made it through the pandemic, and now we've got AI and all this other stuff to contend with. But back to who do you sell to? I mean, it's something that any businesses they really have to spend time with that. They really do. And I encourage them, and the clients that I deal with, I'll press them on that area, because I find a lot of them don't put a lot of thought into that, because they're caught up in the passion. Especially, I'm talking about startups, or even businesses that have been around for a couple of years or so, who may be struggling. It's really important to devote a lot of time and attention and energy into understanding where the money is, because everybody's competing for that dollar. Unless you're the only one doing what you do, which is very, very rare, you have competition, whether it's next door, whether it's online. That's another thing. During the pandemic, we saw a huge change in behaviors. People who never went online went on and said, why haven't I done this sooner? It took people out of going to local shops and going online, which to me was it has its pros and cons. I'm old school. I like going to local shops. I'm a big believer in supporting local business, especially small towns.
Right.
Quite often these are people that live and work in the same place. So. It's critical to know your customer, and what I said earlier about the components of psychology and emotion. If you start looking at that, you're going to find creative ways to advertise. You're going to find creative ways to reach those people, and instead of focusing on what you're selling, try to tap into a nerve of your customer on it. 100%. And the product or what you're selling kind of becomes secondary.
Yeah, no, it really does. It turns into the product is just it's not necessarily a byproduct, but it's kind of a byproduct of your relationship with that person, with your customer. And so you can't have a relationship with somebody until you get to know them. And if you know who you're seeking, you could very much look at this like dating, where it's like, I don't know the person that I want to be with, but I know the kind of person. I know some very key information about them. I know that, like, for me, it's a she. And for me, the she is going to not be over a certain age, and definitely not going to be under a certain age. And they're going to have this kind of belief system, right? I appreciate somebody who is faith-based, or I appreciate somebody who's an entrepreneur. Or I appreciate somebody that wants to stay home and take care of the kids. Whatever it is, having that identified, it's the same thing that a
Right.
business has to go through. So at a baseline level, if this is brand new for somebody, then they can, look at it like dating, and you might get a little bit of insight into who you want to spend time with. And also keep in mind, the one thing that I think about too is with the age demographic. If your age demographic is low, like in the late teens, early 20s, be mindful of who has money and at what point in life that they have money and are able to spend.
Right.
So if you're targeting them like, yeah, these people are coming up and they want to visit and they're coming into the store, I'm like, cool. Are they buying? Like, pay attention to the buying habits. And that's where, like you talked about, like tracking, using the data, the point of sales and all that stuff. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, man. Is there any other lingering thoughts? Anything that you'd want to put out there for businesses that are thinking about how to identify their target audience?
Just do the homework, do the research. Spend the time with it. Start thinking, as you said earlier. Think about from the perspective if you were the customer for what you're buying. Try to separate yourself from being the owner to being a potential customer. Is what you're offering what they're looking for? Is what you're offering and how you're presenting it what they're looking for? Do they even know you exist? These are things. And then once you identify that demographic, and I think you can go down a rabbit hole of figuring out how to reach them with the end game of ringing the cash register. There are so many companies out there from a marketing and branding standpoint, they chose their own tone or their own theme.
Right.
Is it the Dollar Shave Club?
Yeah.
Very, very snarky ads, very
yes.
humorous that drew you in. That was their thing. And people knew, who they are because the guy was just throwing stuff around.
right.
You can, think about your marketing and your branding style. Do you want to be serious? Do you want to be emotional? Do you want to be comedic?
Sarah, I hope you're taking notes for the show.
I would say be cautionary with the comedic.
Yes.
You have to certainly keep tabs on the social temperature of what's going on. We've seen what happened with a major alcohol company. I'm a big believer in you're in business to make money unless your business is founded on a social agenda. My opinion, this is only me, stay out of it. Because, especially nowadays where there's such a polarization, you're guaranteed to offend half of your customer base.
Yep.
Why do you want to do that? Unless your company is founded on that agenda or that cause.
Yeah, if that's part of the vision and mission that you're only going to cater to this half,
right?
Then if that's part of your business model,
exactly.
But if you're reacting out of emotion based off,
if you're hopping on a bandwagon,
right.
you have to be both accepting of reaping the rewards from it and also the consequences of it.
Yep.
Because unfortunately, being so polarized as we have been, hopefully everybody comes together. Just from that standpoint, you're guaranteed to, please a number of people, and you're guaranteed to offend others. And the ones you offend could have been your customers, and now you see a loss in revenue and business. But that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah. It's a beautiful note on marketing, just in the sense, like this will definitely come up in our marketing series coming up, is if you be very mindful, even if there were no political implications from Budweiser, be very mindful of creating a marketing campaign that is directly counter to your entire base, your entire target market.
Right.
So if you want to drop on a dime and turn 180 degrees and go the other way, or even just hint at that, like know who your target audience is and think about the psychographics, think about how they're going to respond and who they are, right? And what are the second and third order effects from that?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, that's rough days.
Let's look at the positive. Better days ahead for everybody.
Yeah, no, and that's, I think, to your point about people coming together like and healing, just in the sense, I think that businesses play a huge role in that because in the way that society is constructed. Like when you go out, if I'm going to go out with like you and some friends, I'm like, we're going to meet up and, we're going to do it at a local business. And it's so much better. I feel better when I'm doing it at a place because if I go to a store or, a theater or something that is a chain, I never feel like I really get to know the people, like, and the owner and stuff like that. It's not like they ever like come out and are like, hey, I'm Tony. It's good to meet you. Like you do that in any local restaurant here in New York. And it's like I feel like I got to know all of them within like 2 visits of anywhere that I've been. You get to know that people, and that's like being around people, physically being around people and spending time with them. That's where we begin to heal. And that's one of the beautiful things about what we do. And,
Sure.
and what you guys can do. So.
Yeah.